This episode is sponsored by Format, the website platform designed to help photographers showcase their work and uncover new opportunities. Grab your free 14-day trial at format.com/TWiP. Then when you're ready, sign up and get 25% off your first year. Format.com, the website platform designed to help photographers showcase their work and uncover new opportunities. In this episode, it's all about artificially intelligent photography. TWiP 518 starts now. This is TWiP. All right, folks. So artificially intelligent photography is the topic du jour of today's episode. I think one of the reasons why I want to do this is because I'm such a science fiction geek and I love science fiction. And it seems like science and fiction are converging, especially in my career field, photography. So Nancy Lehrer and Dave Dugdale are here to talk to me about this topic and hopefully scratch it a little bit and get to the bottom of if this is the end. Are we at the beginning of the end of creativity? Are we going to hand it over to computers, or is this just another tool for us to use? So before we get started, Nancy, both of you guys, welcome to the show. Nancy, you've never been on This Week in Photo before, right? So Dave, you've been on a while ago. So Nancy, I'm going to start with you. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what kind of photography that you do.
Sure. So, Nancy Lehrer. I'm in Southern California. I do street photography. I've been doing sort of street and documentary photography for the last several years, and I don't even know what else to say at this point.
You love street photography. That's it,
I
right?
do.
You love it. Yeah. And just inside baseball a little bit, you and I are going to do an interview coming up in a couple days here, or day after tomorrow, right? We're going to do an interview.
That's right.
We're going to deep dive into your particular mindset and equipment choices and all that stuff as it relates to street photography. So you haven't seen the last of Nancy. So welcome to the show. Welcome to the TWiP hosting crew. It's good to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And Dave Dugdale, the man behind learningvideo.com. Dave, welcome back to the show, man. How you doing?
Hey, good. Thanks. It's been a while. It does feel like it's been a couple of years. I don't know. Maybe it's been a year. I can't remember.
It has been a while. Yeah, years are speeding up now. As I get older, I think years are now compressed into quarters. So
exactly.
So tell us about learningvideo.com. When we first met, it was learningdslrvideo.com, and now it's learningvideo.com. So tell us about that.
Well, I dropped all the Canon cameras that I had years ago, and I moved over to Sony. And with Sony and Panasonic, like the GH, what did I have? The GH4 back then. I was like, the DSLR part just doesn't make any sense anymore. And it's really hard to tell somebody about your URL or email address, and like using those 4 letters. It's just like, so I just found somebody that owned it, and I think I had to pay him like $1,000. I was like, "Can I buy your domain? You're not using it." And he's like, "Sure, that's fine." So I switched it over to Learning Video, which is a lot easier to tell people your email address and stuff like that. So got rid of the mirror and gone mirrorless.
There you go. Cool. And you're fully mirrorless now, right? You're what are you shooting these days?
I'm shooting, actually, I got 2 cameras. I've got the A7R Mark III that I just spent the last 12 weeks creating a course on, and I finally got that done. And then I got a new camera. It just came in, just in for review. It's the A7 III, which is just an amazing camera. I haven't used it that much yet. I'm doing a lot of preliminary tests on it before I start the course. But so far, it seems like a rock solid camera like the other Sony cameras.
Very cool. Well, good. Well, we'll touch on that a little bit later. But before we get started, I want to give a nod to our sponsor, and that's Format.com. They're the sponsor of this week's episode of This Week in Photo. And we will talk a little bit more about Format.com later in the show. But right now, I want to dive into the topic du jour, which is this artificial intelligence stuff. And while we were in the green room, sort of waiting to go live there, Nancy, you basically said that you are an expert at this stuff. At least, in this crowd you are. Right? So So did you get a chance to check out the Google I/O keynote or look at the URL, and you know what's going on with this stuff? So from a top level, so basically, let me set the stage here. Google at Google I/O announced an update to Google Photos with some interesting new computational photography, cloud-based, machine learning type features in there, and they continue to push the ball forward on making every person with a phone a decent photographer. Nancy, are we getting there? Are we close? What do you think?
Oh, to making every person with a phone. That's interesting. So there's two pieces to what they announced. One piece is more actions and more stuff that will make you a great photographer, like selective desaturation and things like that, and one touch, I guess, auto processing and the like. But what I think is more interesting is the way they're using face recognition to connect your photos with your contacts and people you've taken photos with in the past.
Right.
So,
isn't that scary though?
In terms of pointing the camera at something and then having the software make it into a great shot. Well, so being everybody should know that it's not what the software does, it's what you frame up to begin with. So,
but it seems like that statement is becoming less and less true, right? Because it seems like it used to be, back in the olden days before you guys were born, there was like, this idea of aiming your camera, taking photos on the stuff that we called film, you send it off, get it processed, and then it was like, hey, did anything come out? And you were happy to get like one shot that came out, and then you wouldn't do anything with them. They go in the kitchen drawer until you cleaned out the kitchen drawer and you look at them again, right? But now every single shot comes out, and like you said, Nancy, they're applying there's these algorithms to the images to do things, to look for people, to like find complete human forms and drop out the background for programmatic selective color, which I think should be illegal. So, I mean, they're doing that. Dave, when you see this, does this? I mean, do you get excited about this stuff, or like, in other words, like I said in the intro, is this a tool or is this making us into the tool? Like, what do you think?
Well, I watched the keynote and it was interesting because the desaturation feature that they have, the crowd was kind of like, but there was two items where the crowd just went crazy during that keynote. And one was when they took a picture of a document, so it could have been like a model release, and they took a picture and it turned it like instantly into a PDF. Yeah, that you could send, and I guess it maybe can read the text and have some sort of text reading function or something like that. And then the crowd just went crazy. They were like, "Wow!" To me, that wasn't even like that artsy of a photo, because it was just taking a picture of a contract. So I thought that was kind of funny. That they got a big a cheer out of the crowd from that one.
Yeah.
But the other one that got a big cheer from the crowd was when they showed a vintage photo of like a girl and her mother or something like that, and it was done in black and white, and then they just basically clicked the button and it created color. So the grass behind them turned green, and it took a guess at skin tones and stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting. It's kind of like that. I can't remember the name of that company, Scan Cafe. It's kind of like years ago when I did Scan Cafe, and I took all my negatives and I sent them in a shoebox to Scan Cafe, and it came back all, digitized on a CD, or it was on the web as well. And that was wow, that was really cool. But this type of feature with, the old photographs, colorizing, I could see it's just a one-time, ooh, that's cool. And then you'll never think about it again, just as I've almost forgotten the name of the company, Scan Cafe.
Right. Yeah. No, I wonder about this stuff. And Nancy, I want to get your thoughts on this. I'm so happy you're on the show, because you have this deep level of knowledge about how all this stuff works. And I wonder, like in the chat room, Trevor is saying that computers are incapable of making creative decisions. And when I read that, my science fiction brain kicks in. I know we're living in the present and not in the future, but at the same time, we're basically biological computers, right? And we're capable of making creative decisions. How come 20 years from now, there won't be a computer that is at least as sophisticated as our brains and able to make creative decisions, and with superpowers of having the sum total of the world's knowledge connected to it with facial recognition and all that other stuff? Am I too far in the science fiction realm, or is this science, maybe semi nonfiction?
So I confessed to Frederick before we started that my background's in computer science, and I was actually studied and worked in artificial intelligence in the, God, I'm going to date myself here, but in the late 80s and 90s and 2000s.
I was there.
And some of my graduate work was just trying to find the edge of a face and the eyes in an image. And that's where we're at. Now it's in every camera. You can set your cameras to right eye and left eye now.
Yeah.
And then I also want to bring in, so we've gone a huge way in terms of being able to recognize what's in the image and being able to understand it. So understanding that grass is grass and windows are windows and sky is sky and faces are faces and eyes are eyes and lips and noses and what they usually look like, and having a great big database of what skin tones look like and what grass looks like and things like that. So we've gone a huge way. And then sort of the other thing that comes into this is, a number of years ago, IBM created Big Blue.
Mm-hmm.
And what took it over the edge from playing good chess or decent chess to beating chess masters was the fact that you could just do computation so much faster. Mm-hmm. So they weren't able to make it smarter. They just made it faster. So instead of trying to play the game out to 5 or 10 moves ahead and then algorithmically picking what might be the best, they just played the game out to the end. Mm-hmm. Any chessboard, they just played it out to the end. And so they knew what was the best. They didn't have to create any heuristics, any artificial intelligence to understand what was the end. So this combination of speed, large databases, is what's getting us there. And it's not that it's actually thinking like humans. It's actually thinking like humans can't do. So we make lots of judgments because mm-hmm. we can't crunch out and look ahead out to the end of the game at every move on a chessboard. So will it get there? Probably. But it won't get there thinking the way that humans think, thinking the way that humans get there. You have to sort of think about it in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, you're compressing everything down. And yeah, I get that, whereas even when you think of medicine and a good doctor can apply a couple of hundred situations to what looks like that you have, your symptoms and come out with a diagnosis. Whereas a computer, like we've seen, I think Google is behind this as well, where an AI can look through every single record about a particular condition and apply it to your set of biological signatures and come up with a result. Trillions of records or millions at least of records versus a doctor with a couple of hundreds. I would trust the computer more in that situation because it has more data. Now you fast forward, Nancy, you mentioned Big Blue and it being good at board games. You fast forward to today. There was a couple of years ago I watched, or a couple months ago actually, I watched this documentary on Netflix about Go. Remember the game Go, and which is the company that built basically a computer program, which is now owned by Google, that was able to beat the leading Go player in, I think, Korea or something. Go has almost infinite possibilities of how to play that thing. So I'm like, you look at what Trevor's saying in the chat room about how computers can't be, they don't understand composition or aesthetics and all that. If you apply this logic to that, over time, you can get it, right? You can know the rule of thirds and the inverse square law and all these rules about what makes a good photograph and apply them to get a good photograph, right? Or am I wrong?
Maybe. I think that where we should look to see where it's going to go first is when computers can write prose, because I think that's a little more one-dimensional, and we'll be able to see how they can piece together both artistry as well as, you know, good grammar.
Yeah.
Right. And photography is just image grammar.
Now, Dave, I want to throw this one at you, and this is around the idea what Nancy brought up. You know, the idea that one of the features in this new Google rollout is that it can look at an image with a bunch of people in it, identify those people in the image, and then present you with the option of sharing that image with those people, and you don't have to do anything. Basically, you say, "Oh, hey, this picture has Nancy and Dave in it. Do you want to share with Nancy and Dave?" Now, in the back end, it's done a lot of work, and it's, you know, we know Google and Facebook are already doing facial recognition, but I mean, how do you feel about that as a photographer? And a lot of this stuff is going to apply to video as well, so don't think you're safe, right?
Yeah, I think it's great. If you can make it that much quicker to share, I think that's just a fantastic idea. I mean, when you look at like the cameras that I've got, these Sony cameras, I was doing a test recently on the A7S original that came out like 4 years ago. And then I was also testing like the latest one, the A7 III, and I was looking at the face detection. And what it does, it draws a box in video mode around your face, and it basically just tracks your face as it moves around. And even when you like bring your face to a profile, it still knows to be locked onto your face. And then when you like when I was using it in an interview where like the person's playing with their glasses, like, you know, and they might reach a little bit too far and they're covering one eye, it still knows your face is there. Or they might rub their nose and your mouth goes away from the frame basically, and it still knows your face is there.
Yeah.
So those type of things that, you know, I don't know if it's the processor speed or the algorithm that's changed over the last 4 years. It's probably both. But it's gotten so much better. And then on the photography side, like, you know, we've talked about before, like, you know, you got the eye detection. You not only can, you could, you know, which eye do you want? You know, that kind of thing. And it could track the eye and continuous autofocus. Those type of tools, anything that you can make it simpler, faster, more accurate, I'm all for. I think it's fantastic.
See, and I think, yeah, and that, I think you represent a large portion of the population on the planet. But then there's this other part of the planet that I'm part of that I worry about this stuff. And not that I'm like some big, you know, privacy advocate and all that. You know, I want privacy just as much as the rest guy, the next person, but not at the expense of all this other stuff. That's a whole different TWiP. But when I think about this, I think about, and this is abstracting all the you know, the creativity and can computers be creative and all that stuff out of it. But if everyone is uploading all their photos into Facebook and Google and putting them on Snapchat and Instagram and all that, and we have these cloud-based super smart computers that are analyzing everything and they know who everyone is, what's to stop them from drawing inferences to people and saying, you know, hey, Frederick was in a Starbucks the other day, and this evildoer was also in the Starbucks. Let me draw a link to them. I mean, and let's track Frederick for the next 6 months or so because he just sat next to that guy, you know, and now they're tracking everything I do. I mean, and this is happening. I mean, Edward Snowden said this is kind of what's happening right now. We just don't know about it. Nancy, I mean,
yeah,
am I being paranoid?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, you just take the case of the serial killer that they just caught by
DNA,
some of his DNA, and just putting it through a separate cover onto 23andMe and seeing if they get a cat.
Yeah, he got 23 in life.
They were just looking for a relative, and they found him.
Right. And that's a whole nother aspect of it. I mean, you have this visual data, and now you'll have DNA data in the system as well. Like, I don't know.
There are these systems, these satellite systems, drone or low orbit satellites or drone systems. I don't remember. That this one company was trying to sell to law enforcement that was always taking pictures of an area. They weren't always monitoring it, but what would happen is, if a crime got committed, they would take that where that crime was and then play it backwards, just the pieces they needed to figure out where that guy came from. And they would, trace him back to his house from however far back they needed to go. And then they could trace it forward as well.
Oh, wow. See, that's Minority Report stuff right there. That is. So then, okay. That's the one thing that scares me. Then the other thing, like on the positive side of this, right? On the positive side, could it make us more secure? Right? I mean, because, like in the case of Apple and Apple not wanting to unlock their phones for the FBI to find the bombers and all that stuff, and all the controversy that went with that. And then Apple's recent move, I don't know if you know about it. So there was this company that came out with a device that will unlock an iPhone. You plug it into the lightning port and it'll unlock it, and it'll take like an hour or so. Well, what Apple did was they released a software update for iOS that will, if you don't unlock your phone within 7 days or plug it into an authorized computer within 7 days, it will shut off the lightning port completely for any data transfer, only power. So Apple's locking that down on the privacy side of it. So I mean, you look at these two companies, and it seems like it's still Apple and Google representing two halves of the coin in terms of privacy. On the we're going to protect everything side is Apple, and then on the Google side is everything must be in the cloud, and we're going to run smart algorithms on it to do really cool things for you. And trust us, we're not going to do any, that was Facebook with that Cambridge Analytica stuff, that we're not going to do that.
Right. And know whether or not you need a haircut and send you haircut advertisement and what kind of glasses or earrings or
Oh man, yeah. So that, I mean, right? I'm all for the future. I mean, I love technology, but that kind of stuff scares me. Like you get an ad like, "Hey Frederick, I noticed you haven't shaved today. Here's an ad for some razors," or something like that. Dave, I mean, does any of this stuff scare you? Or are you just like, you know what, just roll with it? It's going to be fine. The government has your best interests at heart, and these tech companies would never do anything nefarious. What do you think?
That's a good question. I'd say for me personally, I don't really worry about it because I'm so far out there on YouTube and Facebook and all these platforms I'm on, just because I want to promote the stuff that I want to promote, that kind of thing. But like my teenage girls, I'm like, I go around and make sure that their accounts are, closed accounts or, not public and stuff like that. That part does worry me as a dad, but as a entrepreneur, I like having all these outlets or platforms to go on.
I was thinking like it in my head. And so Stephen in the chat room brought up this movie that I just saw. I think it's on Netflix, called Anon. Have you guys seen that movie?
Yeah, I just saw it.
I've watched that movie 3 times, I must confess. So basically, it creates a future. Clive Owen stars in it, and I forget the other actress's name that stars in it. But it posits a future where we have these augmented reality eyeballs or whatever, and we look at things and we see data about that thing, and what we see is being recorded all the time. So not only can you see data about people instantly just you walk by them, but buildings have virtual billboards on them. You can rewind back in time. The police can rewind back in your life record and see if you committed a crime, or it's a really interesting version of what looks like a direction that we're going in. Now, Nancy, do you feel like that world, obviously some form of that world is coming, especially with Apple, all the rumors about the augmented reality glasses that they're coming out with. Google tried and failed with Google Glass. I mean, no one's stopping this stuff. Plus, we have all these cloud-based things that are being developed, and cars that drive themselves, and all this stuff is happening like right now. Where are we going to be, Nancy, in 2025? Will there be a need for humans?
5 years?
Yeah.
2025, so a little over 5 years.
Yeah, it's scary, isn't it?
I think we're going to be. I think this whole conversation about data privacy is going to get bigger and bigger, in addition to the whole conversation about hacking. Because even if you trust your own government, do you trust other governments?
Right, right.
And so I just saw this thing, I think it was on Stephen Colbert, where China just rolled out that they're equipping their policemen with Google Glass, essentially. And they actually have so much surveillance that, you know, the policeman can look at somebody and then it will bring up everything they know about them.
And they can shame the
So that's that movie. That's Anon.
Yeah, that's right. The jaywalkers, shame the jaywalkers. And
the jaywalkers will be put up on display, I guess, at the intersection. They'll be shamed.
Good grief.
But that's what they're telling us about, you know, but, you know, depending on how much you trust your government and what they're going to do with that data. But, you know, the cat's out of the bag. I have a friend who's all paranoid about all this stuff. And I said, you know, the cat's out of the bag. If you haven't closed down all your information 5 years ago,
you're done.
Forget it. Cat's out of the bag, right?
Yeah, so you might as well just live, you know, and just thank goodness that the human lifespan is only 90 years or so. So you don't have to deal with it much longer. So the other piece, I wanted to shift gears on this. So and viewers and listeners, I would encourage you to check out the link in the show notes for this to go look at what Google is doing with Google Photos. It's really interesting and it's really fun. Go play around with it, but you'll be able to see, especially having listened to this conversation, you'll be able to see the tangents that we're drawing in terms of where things might go in the future if it's only 2018 and we're seeing this level of sophistication with this stuff today. But the other piece I wanted to draw on this stuff is in a completely digital world, right? So video games are getting better and better and more photorealistic, and they're building these whole worlds, kind of like Ready Player One. They're building these whole worlds within video games that are photorealistic in a lot of ways. And in fact, one of the games that I have, it even has a photographer mode in there where if you find a location that looks great, you can take a picture inside the game and you own the copyright to that photo because it's a procedurally generated photorealistic world, right? So Dave, what do you think about that? I mean, like these virtual worlds that are popping up that in some ways are more complex and more detailed than the real world that you have access to. Now, immersing yourself in there and creating photographs in there. Is that photography? Do you think that's photography?
It's a good question. Kind of along those lines of that topic you just brought up. You bring up an interesting, that just sparked an idea in my head. Yeah. Like I was just looking at Nancy. I've never met Nancy before, and I was looking at her street photography before we started this in the first 10 minutes. And it's great. I'm not much of a street photographer, so looking at other people's work, it's like, wow, that's really cool. Going back to your video game, what if there was some way to like look at Nancy's feed of her photos, and it says, okay, the algorithm goes through, the AI kind of figures out what she likes and the composition, right? And so you're like, I want to be like Nancy. I want to be more like Nancy. So you download an app that's called like, this video game, Nancy Street Photography or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it would be so cool. And this is where nobody's really gone before, but I think it would be the greatest learning tool because when I first started, well, not street photography, but more video and framing and composition and stuff like that, it's learning what not to shoot. Mm-hmm. So if you had this app, this game, let's say, and it's like Nancy's composition or whatever, and you start pointing your camera or your phone around and it keeps having this big X over it until you get to the spot where it's like, stop. And all of a sudden the X goes away and you're like, oh, there it is. That kind of thing.
It worked.
That would be cool.
Yeah, see, and now that's coming. That's coming, man. That is scary. All right. So I wanted to put that bug in your ear just because that's photography, right? It's image making. If you're inside a virtual world, the rules of composition and image making and all that stuff should apply within that world, depending on how the game creator created the physics within that game, right? So I don't know. I'm interested to see where that could go, and if when are we going to see the first gallery show that was created from photographs taken within a virtual world? And
wasn't there a guy that would spend hours and hours searching through Google Earth and created a photo gallery of his images of slices from Google Earth.
Oh no, I didn't see that. Wow.
Yeah, I think this was a while back.
Wow.
So
Yeah. See,
I'm sure, you know, there's, you know, and then there's the Prince, I think was somebody Prince, who took photos of people's photos on magazines and turned them into other things. So I know Sam Abel got ripped off this way.
mm-hmm.
The Marlboro guy, and so people have been doing it.
Yeah.
You know, that
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of copyright concerns, and I mean that's another 2 months of This Week in Photos. So, but okay, so here's another twist in this for you guys. What about the? So we have, like, Dave, you just got your A7R3, right? You're happy with it. I shoot with the G9. I'm happy with it. Nancy, you're shooting with Olympus, if I recall, right? So
that's right.
These cameras are computers in and of themselves. So what do you guys think? And Nancy, I'll throw this at you first. What do you think is next for cameras, and how come we're not seeing the level of innovation in terms of software, operating systems, you know, computational photography, cloud-based image, you know, photo recognition, all that stuff down on the phone, or not the phone, but the mirrorless or DSLR level? How come we don't see that yet?
Size and heat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, these cloud algorithms, there can be vast arrays of computers helping out, and the technology there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, the heat that they give off.
Hey, but you know, I got to counter you on that. I got to counter you because my iPhone does all that stuff that I just mentioned, and these Android phones do all those things. And you know, I'm no engineer, but I would imagine they could kind of fit some of that stuff into the body of a camera. How come we don't see that kind of cell phone technology inside of your Olympus? And would you use it if it was there? Would you use it if you had the ability to download apps to your? I know Sony tried this, but if you had the ability to really download apps into your camera to do things like an intervalometer, image recognition, you know, there's a law enforcement version that's tapped into the let's say the ICE database or something, and you know, and it recognizes people when you snap photos. Is that where things are going? And would you want that?
Hi.
I'll go to Dave. Dave,
sorry,
you can answer that.
Go to Doug.
Dave.
Dave.
Going back to that question you asked, what would I like to see, you know, going into the future? Could be improved upon would be like the like your iPhone, I'm guessing, has GPS information.
Mm-hmm.
It knows where you are, and it knows what direction you're pointing it in. Mm-hmm. So these cameras like Olympus, Sony, Canon, whatever, Panasonic, it would be great if they had that kind of awareness of where they are. Like if I'm pointing west and I know what time it is, and know I'm going to expose a certain way. To me, it feels like when I'm using my iPhone lately and I'm taking pictures and I'm changing directions and stuff like that, it feels like it's aware of, you know, not only am I pointing it up towards the blue sky and it maybe is bringing the blue channel down a bit, or to increase the contrast in the clouds, or if I'm pointing it down, maybe it does something different, or if I'm pointing it west, maybe it brings up, you know, it knows it's around sunset, maybe it adds the saturation in yellows and oranges to make the sunset a little bit more. Why can't we get that in, you know, these professional cameras? And when you're in the A or the idiot auto mode, that would be kind of fun, because I would love to try that, you know, flip over the A mode. It's like, hey, that looks even better, I'm going to use that, you know, that kind of thing. Because you know, I'm not much of a street photographer.
Yeah, I just wonder. I wonder if it's like, you know, because these camera manufacturers, it's like they're the marketing templates that they're working from are getting thinner and thinner, right? So, you know, how much low light sensitivity do you need, right? So, you know, at some point, you know, or it used to be the megapixel war. Remember that? Everything was more and more megapixels. Every release, it was more and more megapixels. You know, you had to have the camera that had more resolution, and that kind of went away, and it went to low light performance. So I'm wondering what the next wave for these cameras is. Is it computational photography? Nancy, what do you think?
Uh, um, there are some things that, so I'm more of a, like, I want to tell the camera what to do, not have it tell me what to do.
Right.
Kind of shooter. But there is something that I would love in these cameras that should be like trivial for the camera makers to do. And that is follow my time zone. How many times do you forget to change the time on your camera and you don't realize it till you're halfway through, the first day somewhere else? That would seem easy with some GPS technology.
Yeah.
But I'm more of like, I want to tell the camera what to do than have the camera tell me what to do.
But I want that too. I mean, it's kind of like, like paddle shifters in the car, right? I want to be I want to be able to shift when I want to shift gears, but then when I just want to drive, I just want to drive the car. I want to be able to go manual if I want to and have that fine level of manual control. But then if I'm paying thousands of dollars for this piece of kit, I want to be able to tell it to do cool things on its own and execute the vision probably better than I could. Now that's not to say that this computational photography stuff that I wanted to take over and I want to hand over the controls of my X-Wing to the targeting computer, right? I still want to control everything, but at the same time, I want technology to enhance the experience of photography and allow me to do things I couldn't do before versus take the experience of photography away from me. So
yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like watching, I remember years ago watching Trey Radcliffe do some stuff, and he was like, just go to the preset. Let's look at the presets for this particular one. Does any one work for you or maybe not? And it's kind of that automated process. And it's kind of the same thing for me when I'm out in the field and I'm filming. I'll guess like the Kelvin that is it warmer or cooler in terms of the white balance? Is it green or magenta? That kind of thing, and especially if I'm shooting indoors. A lot of times what I'll do is I'm like, let's go to automatic white balance, see what it's at. It's like, oh, I like that a little bit better. How do I get there? Because I want to get it locked in. And so I'll go back to like the Kelvin adjustment and like bump it up a little bit, or, maybe if it's like fluorescent lights, take a little bit of the green out and that kind of thing. So for me, I'm kind of like you, Frederick, where I embrace those automatic tools if I can. To get me to the point where I want to do it manually.
And that's growing up with photography, there's always been this stigma for, you talk to especially older school photographers, some of them will shoot, they'll poo-poo anything except M. If you're not shooting manual and you don't understand your f-stop, shutter speeds, ISOs and all that stuff, then you're not a real photographer. And then some photographers like me, I used to like gravitate towards aperture priority for everything because my main thing was I like blurry backgrounds and I'm going to get as blurry a background as I can based on the light available. So, but on these newer cameras, especially on mirrorless and, these like on the Lumix that I shoot, there's all these cool different modes that you can use. And there's intelligent auto mode where the camera will make intelligent decisions about the scene. You take a Lumix camera and aim it at a plate of food, a little icon shows up that says, hey, I'm aiming at food. It knows you're aiming at food. You aim it at a baby, it will put a little baby icon on the screen. It'll say, oh, I'm aiming at a baby or landscape or whatever. And it will give you a good starting point based on what it thinks the right exposure type settings are for that thing. And in the example of like a baby or an infant, it's going to pick a faster shutter speed. So because it knows babies tend to move fast. Or if you're shooting food, it may, depending on the mode you're shooting in, it may add, saturation to the shot to make the food look better. Now, Nancy, where do you fall on this? I mean, if you're a street photographer, but you're kind of you're an interesting sort of street photographer because you shoot in color, which I don't even think is legal in street photography.
And that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, that's why you wrote the book. So where do you fall on this stuff? Like the different modes? Should we be like, we're professional photographers, so we don't use any of the automatic modes, or should we be embracing these modes?
I fall on
whatever you want to say. There's no wrong answer.
I know my camera has those modes.
Yeah, but you don't want to use them?
I don't want to use them. I think they're learning tools. I think they will get you so far. I think they will get you to a certain point. I think they will get you from tripping over your feet to walking in a straight line. But will they make you a great racer?
Right.
So a great runner. So if you want to be a great runner, you're going to have to learn what they're doing. So then the next step is, wow, this night mode looked really good. But then as Dave was saying, I have to redeem myself there.
That's all right.
He gets everybody with that. That's a trap he sets for people.
Yeah. As Dave was saying, then you want to look and say, and sort of reverse engineer, well, what was that night mode doing? So maybe I can use it better in some other photo and learn what it was doing. So yeah, I know a lot of photographers who, when a newbie shows up, the first thing they do is grab their camera and set it up as manual and say, here, you got to shoot this way. I don't go that far.
Yeah.
But I think once you're running, once you're jogging, you then have to learn how to get beyond jogging to get to be a great runner. You have to learn, what you're doing yourself. I
think a lot of it, a lot of this is, it depends on what the end result that you're looking for is, right? So, because in the end, depending on what you're doing, like some people use photography as a sort of catharsis to, this is my weekly therapy. I'm going to go out and shoot, and it's insular, and I feel better after I shoot. And some people use it as an ego, stoker, where, hey, look at this shot I did. Give me some likes and some thumbs up, right? So some people do that. But, in the end, like, if what you're trying to do is get better at the mechanics and the physics and the psychology and all that stuff of photography, then then you should go and understand with all the knobs, bells and whistles and what's happening when you press that shutter. You should understand that intrinsically. But on the other hand, if you don't care about that stuff, if you just want to get to the destination, I think that's okay too. Because I think of it, I use the analogy of a car, right? So some people like fixing cars. They like getting under there and changing the oil, and they know how everything works. When you hit the brakes, they know the linkages. They know what's happening when you hit the brakes. Or when you turn, turn the wheel. They know exactly what's happening. And arguably, they have more control over the car. But if you're just a person that just wants to get from your house to the grocery store, you couldn't care less about how, you just want to get there. It's the same thing with photography, I think. Some people like to build the car and understand how the mechanics work, and some people just want to get to the destination. I think both are okay. So I don't know. That's just what I think. Dave, I want to switch gears a little bit to video, since that's your expertise, and I want to, like, this wave of computational photography, obviously, as processor speeds increase and technology gets better and all these things change, we're going to see them start being applied to video as well as stills, because video is just a series of fast moving stills, right, with audio. What do you think about that? I mean, is it what you as a video content creator, educator, producer, what is missing from your workflow right now that you think technology could solve?
Wow, that's a good question.
I got a couple of those.
Oh, but you put me on the spot on this one. In terms of like AI-ish kind of stuff.
Yeah. Like, what's missing? Like, if you're looking at your workflow and you're like, you know what, this would be so great if my camera, if I'm shooting video and I could capture raw video, and I wanted to be able to, like, have something like the old Lytro technology that got acquired by Google, right? So to be able to focus later in a linear video and change the focal point later as a director when you're in the edit versus having to get it right at the capture. Would something like that interest you, or like what's missing?
No, I mean, I remember when that came out years ago, I was like, yeah, I don't know, because I would rather have more accurate autofocus and it read my mind in terms of what I want in the frame. Because like when I'm studying like the Sony cameras, a lot of times their autofocus zone, like you're in continuous autofocus, it's very center weighted in the center of the frame. So whatever is in the center of frame, it gives like top priority. But if there's like nothing in the center frame, let's say it's just a like blank wall, and there's something up in the corner of the frame that has high contrast, it's like, all right, I got nothing in the center of the frame to go. I'll pick the stuff way out here,
right.
To actually focus on. So for me, the Lytro technology, that just sounds like you're increasing my workload, which I don't want to do.
Right.
I would rather get even more intelligent AI built into the autofocus system for video. So it's like we're getting great with the faces. That's fantastic. But when there's multiple faces, it's almost like you get to try to understand the algorithm in such a way when you're shooting, you kind of know what the autofocus is about to do. Is it going to leave this face to go to another face? I mean, you can register faces now, and they've gotten really good at that too. I mean, like I've got a couple of my girls' dolls that I brought up from the basement, and they're American Girl dolls, if you know what those are. And they basically have the same form and shape of their face. They're slightly different. And if you register their faces in the Sony camera, it knows which one's which. So one could be the bride and one could be the bridesmaid. So if you're setting up at the beginning of the day, you can have the autofocus latch on to the bride rather than the bridesmaid. Or if the bride's not in the frame, boom, it's going to the bridesmaid, it works fantastic. That type of stuff, if they keep evolving on that kind of stuff, that would, to me, makes me even more happy because it's getting better and it's come a long way in the last 4 years, but I think they can do even better, especially since everything's so center weighted. I'd rather it be maybe bigger than center weighted, more towards the edge of the frame and understanding when there's not a face in the and also like the object tracking like Sony has. You could say like this object that I have behind my head here, I could say I want to track that and lock onto it, and then it'll constantly lock on that object. Well, that part of the autofocus system and the Sony universe is very slow and laggy. If they could make that faster, that could be a better tool for video.
Yeah. I mean, I think the bottom line, and we'll close this topic off with this. I think part of the bottom line is that, and I say that, I feel like I say this almost every year. TWiP has been around for several years, and I feel like I say this every year that we're at the beginning of this wave of technology, and every year, the next year, I'm surprised at the stuff that comes out and the capabilities that I have. There's all and Nancy, my introduction to mirrorless was with an Olympus OMD EM5, I think it was, and the thing that hooked me on mirrorless was the ability to see a long exposure draw over time, which my Panasonic can't do, but that Olympus could do it, and it could draw like I did. I went to San Francisco and I did that obligatory shot of piers, with the water looking like fog, and you sit there with the camera on a tripod and look at the back of the camera, and the water just gets more and more foggy over time, and you just stop it when you're done. I was sold after that. I was completely sold on mirrorless. So
fireworks.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. The thing that hooked me on the Olympus, but on mirrorless in general, was the ability to change your exposure compensation and actually see it in the viewfinder. So what you see is really what you get. I started with the generation before the EM5 with the EPL2. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. See these kids today. See, I think you have to have come from a background where you, like me, where you shot film to really, really appreciate. Like the one thing that just killed me with just digital. Like my first digital camera was a Canon 10D. So the thing that killed me with that camera was like, wait a minute. So you're telling me I can change the ISO? Wait a minute. I can change the ISO, and I don't have to worry about carrying multiple bricks of film for different exposures. Yeah.
Right.
So
Right. And then people would talk about Portra and say, you can shoot any exposure on it, it still works, right?
Yes. Yeah. I love this stuff. I love it. All right, guys, I want to remind the chat room and folks that are watching this that we are streaming live. So if you want to get in on the conversation, get your question in to the chat now. Christopher Berry is in there, and he will grab your questions and throw them in the Google Doc that all three of us are looking at right now as we record this. So if you have a question about anything or one of these topics, make sure you throw them in the chat room, and we will get to them in the next segment after this one. And with that, I want to take a quick pause to give a nod to the sponsor for this week's episode of This Week in Photo, and that's Format.com. This episode is sponsored by Format, the website platform designed to help you showcase your work and uncover new opportunities. Format.com is the top choice to build your portfolio website. Voted most trusted by artists, designers, illustrators, photographers, models, and more. Creative professionals across the globe use Format to showcase their work. It's simple. As a creative professional, you need a website that reflects the quality of your work, and Format's easily customizable themes showcase your work in the best way possible. And making changes to your website is quick and simple with their powerful yet easy to use editor. Basically, there's zero coding experience needed. The Format team designed the platform with creative business needs in mind. You get a fully functional site with e-commerce, client proofing, marketing, blogging tools, and more. So you really never have to look anywhere else. And to top it all off, the Format support team is made up of professional creatives like you who are available to answer your questions 24/7. You can ask them anything about your website and they'll respond within minutes. Start your 14-day free trial today at format.com/TWiP. Then you'll get 25% off your first year. That's format.com/TWiP. So it is time for the Picks of the Week segment. This is the segment when you guys get to recommend anything that you would like to recommend to the This Week in Photo audience, as long as it is somehow related to photography. Nancy, since you have never been on the show, this is your first time, hopefully first of many, I'll let you go first. What is your pick of the week?
Great. So I think the new Olympus. Oh, sorry, I was looking at your other photo. I thought you were still talking to me.
See, I told you not to look at the live stream.
Yeah, don't look. So the new Olympus f1.2 glass. They've come out with three different focal lengths. So micro four thirds is 2x crop, so just double everything I'm going to say. So they've come out with a 17, a 25, and a 45, and they're all f1.2 glass. They're a little bit bigger than, what we go for mirrorless cameras for, but I just took one and I did this series of night shots in Venice. I took the 17, which is a 35. And it would just behaved fantastically. So it's really great to see all these like really high quality lenses, fast prime lenses coming out in the mirrorless world.
And those are all 1.2? Those are f1.2?
Yeah. They're all 1.2.
Wow.
Do you know how much the 17 cost?
Oh, and they're all priced at $12.99.
$12.99. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Just $12.99 per. That's amazing where things have gone.
Yeah, and then I wanted to just also do a shout out to you can now like get custom printed business card size USB.
Oh, cool.
Drives.
What?
Look at that. That's some swag.
That's an awesome pick of the week. Are you kidding me? What does that cost to get that?
So this cost I only ordered 50, so it cost about $6 a piece. Obviously if you order more, it would be less. You send them the design. And so I bring these with me and I can sell my book in PDF form.
Oh, wow.
On this little card.
Oh, that is fantastic. Wow. Make sure you give me the link to that in the show notes so I can put that in the blog post.
Yes.
Yeah, so it looks like it's thin enough that it can fit in your wallet too.
Yeah, it's a business card. Essentially,
it looks really thin.
It's very sturdy.
Huh.
What's the capacity? What are the different sizes they come in?
Well, I got a 2 gigabyte. You can get them larger.
You could put a whole course on that, Dave.
Wow, that's cool. I like that.
You could sell physical courses on little business card things and give them away at trade shows.
Just carry it around your wallet. It's like, here's a course.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, exactly. No need to go home and download a PDF or download a course or anything. These are really
killer.
Cool.
That's killer. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. That was two excellent picks of the week for your first time on the show. I appreciate that. All right, Dave Dugdale. What is your pick of the week?
That would be the A7 III for $2,000. This full frame camera is amazing me. It's really quite something. I've only had it for 3 days and running some tests on it, but with the new increased battery size to the things like My Menus built in. You know, the 4K recording's great in terms of it doesn't pixel bend in either crop mode or full frame. So far it's been a fantastic camera, and for $2,000, that's hard to beat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. You know, having a mirrorless camera at that price range, I have my B&H rep that I work with. Sounds like they're just flying off the shelf right now. They're having a tough time keeping them in stock. It looks like it's going to be an extremely popular camera.
That's awesome. Good. Well, Sony's crushing it. Sony has been crushing it for a while now. So
it's almost like that when they came out with this and they put a $2,000 price tag on it, they're like, okay, Canon, what do you got?
Yeah.
We're like, try to match this because it's going to be tough.
Yeah, that was our last show. See, it's funny you just say Canon. You don't even mention Nikon, right? So our last show was we beat them to death, I think. So yeah, interesting stuff. All right, cool. I have a pick of the week. My pick of the week is, and I just did a review on this that I'm going to publish tomorrow on This Week in Photo and on our YouTube channel. And it's for the Lumix Leica 200mm f2.8 lens, and it comes with a 1.4x teleconverter, and you can get an optional 2x teleconverter for it as well. I've never owned a fixed focal length long lens like that. So it took a little bit of getting used to, but wow. I was like, wow. Because it's the last long focal length lens I had like that was a zoom lens, and I don't think it had image stabilization in it. This one is image stabilized, and on the Lumix G9, it has in-body image stabilization. It uses the in-body and the lens stabilization simultaneously, and it gives you about 5-ish stops of extra handheld power with this thing. So I was surprised when I took it out. I took it out to the Sacramento Zoo, bummed around in there, took a bunch of photos, and I was blown away at what this thing could do. The only negative about it for me was I had to drop it in FedEx yesterday to send it back to Panasonic because it was just a loaner, and B, they're just under $3,000 to get the lens, but if you get it from B&H, they're doing some special where you can get $500 off. So for about $2,500, you can get the lens. And for me, I don't need the lens that badly to spend $2,500 on it. But I could see if you were doing, some people in the TWiP Pro community do auto racing, and I know people that do birding and that kind of thing. So if you're doing that, I think, it's worth the investment, but not just to have it to keep it in your bag just in case, aliens land across the street and you want to get a close up. So, so that's my pick. The Lumix Leica 200mm f2.8. And we're going to continue the show, guys. We had started this thing where we were ending the show here and then going into overtime with the questions, but it looks like we only have a couple of questions this week, so I'm going to continue the show and move right into the Q&A segment. And the first question, the first Q&A is from Trevor Panaki. Trevor says, has the massive influx of technology contributed to the decline of the artistic viability of photography? We keep pushing for more and more tech. To what end? Nancy, what do you think? Are we oversaturated with technology and we just want the next thing when we don't really need it? What do you think?
It becomes more and more difficult to justify the next upgrade of your camera. How many reviews have you read recently that says, oh, well, if you have the previous generation, you would only consider this if.
Right, right.
So I think we are, but I think people still keep buying new cameras and get new tech. I
would say Trevor's question, that question is, you could ask that same question 10 or 15 years ago or 20 years ago, right? You could have said you could have phrased it in the exact same way. And you're like, to what end? Not knowing that today that we were going to have cell phones and drones and Sony cameras that see in the dark and mirrorless and all this other stuff. So, I don't think there's a way to to feasibly say, you know, let's slow down on technological developments as it applies to photography, because you don't know what's just around the corner. I mean, like Steve Jobs said, we don't know what we need yet. So, you know, there's going to be something that comes out next week. They're going to be like, I don't know how I live my life without that thing. I must get it. I'm going to take a second mortgage out to get it. So, all right. So here's another question. This one's from Christopher Berry, our community manager. This is to you, Dave. He says, have you reviewed the Fuji X-H1, especially for video?
I haven't, and I should, because it looks like it's a pretty awesome camera. It shoots 4K. It's got IBIS. It's the one thing that I think is most interesting about this camera, and I haven't had it in, but I've seen other people review it, is all the different film stocks or color modes that I think Fujifilm has built into it that you can select. I think that would be very interesting. So, I mean, coming at $1,900, it's very close to like the A7 III in terms of money. But the one that I'm really interested in that's coming to come out this September is the Blackmagic. Let's see if I can get this right. Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. It's basically a micro four thirds camera, but it'll be able to, you know, shoot RAW, ProRes. It's got a huge 5-inch screen on the back. It's, you know, it takes micro four thirds lenses. Should have pretty good dynamic range. And since I used DaVinci Resolve as my NLE and my coloring,
oh, you're using that? Interesting. Oh.
Yeah, I left Premiere a couple of years ago. To me, that camera, which is that camera, I think is $1,300.
Yeah,
that's the one that's really got me the most interested in.
You know, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that one. I'll give you a little inside baseball. I interviewed them earlier this week, the Blackmagic rep for that camera, because we were going to talk about it. Did the whole interview, and for some reason, the guy that was doing the interview, great guy, but for some reason, he decided to do it from his laptop on Wi-Fi, and I think the lobby of Blackmagic. So the whole interview was like Skype, robotic, you know, stopping every 5 seconds. And I tried to salvage it, but it turned out to be unusable. So we're going to reschedule it for next week. We're going to do an interview. And it's interesting, some of the learnings that came out of that, because I researched the camera, obviously, before I did the interview, was that thing. One of my questions to him was, why would I want to get that thing when I shoot Lumix and, you know, it's 4K and I have all these bells and whistles and I have a GH5 and a G9. Why do I need that camera that doesn't even have an articulated LCD on it, right? So he went down the line of a couple things. And a couple things that stood out in my head were, you can plug a hard drive into that camera. Yeah,
you can.
You can plug
It's got the USB Type-C connector.
Yes.
Those little angel bird, I think they're called.
Yep.
Little tiny ones. You can basically just duct tape it to the side of the camera.
And record forever. Yeah, and you can plug it into the wall.
Take that hard drive, the SSD, and then basically plug it into your computer and just start editing.
Yeah.
You don't even have to transfer. You know?
It is really, really cool. Yeah, that was really interesting, because I was like, why? And I still don't think that camera's for me, because for the stuff that I do, because, you know, I'm doing this kind of thing. I'm recording this right now on a GH4. So, you know, the GH4 is a really awesome camera, and I've relegated it to being a webcam. So it shows you how much I need tech. Right?
So do you need more tech? Exactly.
Yeah. Do I really need more technology right now? I'm using, you know, I'm using a Rolls Royce to, like, you know, empty out the garage. But yeah, so yeah, it's interesting, and I'll publish that thing as soon as it comes out. Here's another question.
And
go ahead, Nancy.
Remember when the first mirrorless cameras came out, they were like at $1,000 price point, and people said, "Oh, that's a lot of money."
Mm-hmm.
And now they're at a $2,000 price point. I mean, the top of the Panasonic, Olympus, Sony, Fuji, right? And people are you know, so there's some note in the chat that we're paying with our pocketbook for all these features and all this tech.
Yeah. They wouldn't be building the stuff if we weren't buying it. So it's our own fault. It's our own fault. We are the market. All right. Here's another question. This is the last one. And Chris says this is for everyone. He says, also, when making an image or video, what features do you find yourself disabling, even though you may have made your buying decision on inclusion of those features? Yeah, that's hard. Yeah. Nancy, you want to go first?
So the feature that automatically switches between the back of the camera and the electronic viewfinder, I just turned that switch off.
Yeah.
And then on the new Olympus, so this is really funny. On the new Olympus, the viewfinder folds out. You kind of have to, the back of the camera, you kind of have to fold it out and then turn it over and fold it there. And I just keep it closed. Like, I don't even have the viewfinder on the back of my camera anymore. I just keep it closed.
Oh, wow. You don't even look at that, huh? Wow.
No, I mean, you know, I'll flip it out to chimp or whatever, but I just keep it closed.
That's cool. That's cool.
So that beautiful 3-inch viewfinder, I hardly ever use.
Wow. You should try to get your money back or a rebate or something on that. What about you, Dave? What features do you have on your camera that you're like, yeah, I wanted it when I bought it, but now I don't use it?
It's like, oh, that's a really good idea. And you're like, I haven't used it. I would probably say on the Sony cameras, it's the S&Q. So slow and quick. So you could like create slow motion or time lapses by just rotating the mode dial. And then boom, you're in the slow motion type thing. And the reason I don't use it, I thought it was cool at the time because it would be a quick way to switch over to, you know, shoot for slow motion. But the one of the biggest reasons is when you do that, you lose audio. And I like having some form of audio, even if it's the internal mics on the camera, if I need it later. And then the other thing on the Sony cameras, if you use the slow and quick, it'll actually lower the bit rate. Like I think if, like, for instance, if you're shooting at 120 frames per second, the bit rate will go down to 20 meg versus if you were to do it normal, like the normal XAVCS codec, it would be 100 meg. So your quality, or you have basically less compression, or you have a better codec shooting that way. So at the time I was like, oh, that sounds cool. But now I'm like, yeah, I only use it when I'm in a rush and I can't change the shutter speed to match the 180-degree rule quickly. I'll use the slow and quick. But yeah, that's the
slow and quick. Yeah. The one feature that I still intend on using this feature on my cameras, but it's the 6K photo mode. It's got my Lumix cameras have a 4K and a 6K photo mode, which essentially allows you to take like 30 frames a second, you know, stills, and then you can go in and basically slide your finger along and extract one of the photos out of the range. So someone's doing like a layup or in some sort of action thing, you can capture that whole thing and then go back later and harvest out the image that you want. I'm going to use it. I just haven't had an opportunity to use it. But that's killer. And it's also got this mode on it, my G6 or sorry, G9, called post focus, where you can capture. You put the camera on a tripod or something, and it will capture a series of images throughout a depth of field range and then composite them together to give you a full depth of field, focus stacking essentially. But you can also do the same thing like you can do with the 6K photo mode, where you can go in and find the one that is the right slice of depth of field and extract that out. So I haven't used either one of those features yet, but I gotta dust them off and try them. I've been doing the Nancy thing and just shooting with the camera. I gotta get into the bells and whistles of this thing. All right, guys, we are at the end of another episode of This Week in Photo. Folks in the chat room, thank you for participating and coming along for this ride. And if you want to continue the conversation in our community, just head over to TWiPPro.com. That's the This Week in Photo community. You can connect with me, our co-hosts, or, you know, whatever you want to do. You know, just check it out at TWiPPro.com. Nancy, tell us a little bit about what you're working on and where people can go to find out, you know, some of your cool projects.
So my website is inancyimages.com. My Facebook handle and my Instagram handle are both Nancy Lehrer. And, you know, I just wrote this book, Life Happens in Color. And so I'm working on parlaying that into some workshops and some other local teaching possibilities. And
are you going to do those locally? Like when you start doing your workshops, are you going to do them down in Southern California? Because I know you mentioned you like to travel a lot, or are you going to do them around the world?
Well, they're going to start out down in Southern California. I have some ideas about how to organize them, but not quite ready to let the cat out of the bag.
Okay. All right. So let me know. Let me know when you're ready to let the cat out of the bag. I'll help you put down some cat litter. So.
Great.
All right. Dave Dugdale, where can people find you, and what are the things that you're working on?
Learningvideo.com, and I'm on Twitter and all that stuff. And the next thing I'm working on is the A7-3 course. Hopefully I'll have it done in a few weeks. It shouldn't take me too long to do this one. But yeah, that one's keeping me really busy.
Yeah, that's good, because your courses are amazingly comprehensive, right?
Oh,
they are. Yeah, you go through every bell, all the bells and whistles,
yes,
and
I go through everything. Yeah, it's like a 5 or 6 hour course.
Wow! And what does that course run? How much?
It's $49.
$39? That's it?
$49. I had it on sale for like the first 10 days at $39 when I released the A7R3.
You must be selling a group of those things because it's at that low price point. I mean, I would put a 1 in front of that if I were you.
Yeah.
Just saying. I don't know. Just saying. That's a lot of work, But, Sony people have a lot of money, so, just... All right, guys. Well, cool. Thank you both for coming on this episode. It's been a pleasure chatting with you guys about artificially intelligent photography. I am more scared now than I was at the beginning of the show. I don't know where things are going. But, the good news is we're all getting older. So, what I tell people is, I'll be senile and I won't even care. So I'm like, yeah, whatever, go ahead and track me. I don't care. Whatever. So cool. Well, thanks guys for coming on. I appreciate it. And to the folks that are listening, watching, or otherwise keeping up with us, just make sure you head over to thisweekinphoto.com to subscribe to our podcast, and please subscribe to this YouTube channel. That way you'll get notified when we release new episodes, or I publish a new episode that's going to go live at some point in the future. And that's it. That's it for this episode of This Week in Photo. It is time to take that lens cap off. This is TWiP.